Before we jump into today's show, I kind of want to address the elephant in the room and get this out of the way because you have probably heard Baker Mayfield is starting for the Carolina Panthers week 1. They made the announcement. So let me know, are you concerned about playing Baker? He's got the revenge aspect. He spoke about it to the media saying he would be lying if that was not going to be an emotional game. So if you are not concerned about Baker going up against his old team and you've got confidence in Myles, Garrett, Clowney, and the rest of this defense bringing down number 6, hit that thumbs up icon to start today's show. Today's Browns Report is sponsored by Mint Mobile. You may have seen some of their ads. It's owned and operated by the famous actor Ryan Reynolds, and they have an awesome deal for the Dog Pound with cell phone plans starting as low as $15 a month. It's an awesome way to try and save some bucks and beat inflation. So check it out at mintmobile.com/chatsports. Proud to tell you more about their awesome benefits later on in today's show. But speaking of today's show, it is roster projection time, right? 2 preseason games in the books. So I thought we would take a look at some new roster projections going around because a handful of people are floating out their own. So why don't we have some fun on the show? It is still, I wouldn't say early, but we have another preseason game to go through. So nothing is set in stone at all. But if you had a gun to my head, here's what I'm rolling with. Plus, I do have a bit of a surprise/kicker at the end. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So, starting the quarterback room, this is pretty simple and straightforward. Deshaun Watson will not count for a roster spot, by the way. So he's a freed up spot. So you got Jacoby, Brissett, and then you have Josh Dobbs right there. So pretty simple and straightforward. Now, running back room will get more interesting. Now, I want you guys to get involved early on in the show by DMing or tweeting me your roster predictions at Matthew Petey. My link to my Twitter handle is in the comments and the description. Let me know if you got any hot takes for me. All right, moving on here. Running back room. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Nick Chubb is a lock. Kareem Hunt or Dearness Johnson. I used to believe that the Browns would put all 5 running backs on this roster. Now it seems more likely than unlikely that either Hunt or Chubb is going to get traded. So just one of those spots belongs to them. Jerome Ford, the rookie, a lock. I have Demetric Felton making this roster. He's on the bubble right now, but I think he will end up cracking the 53-man roster. Let's check out the wide receiver room. Amari Cooper, DPJ, David Bell, all of them locks. I know that there is a contingent of people in the Dog Pound beating the drum to cut Anthony Schwartz. Stop. It's Nick Saban. I'm not answering, so quit asking. It ain't happening. You know what I mean? Anthony Schwartz is not getting cut. You just don't cut a third-round pick who doesn't have character and off-the-field issues after 1 season and half a training camp / preseason. Now, I also have Michael Woods making this roster. He's got a hamstring injury right now. Sometimes you see teams put players on IR, not because necessarily they have a season-ending injury, but because, all right, you're going to miss some time. Let's put you on IR, stash you there, and we'll bring you back next year. So those are my 5 receivers. The last one, the number 11 spot right there, is up for debate, right? You can go with Jamarcus Bradley, and I wouldn't really be opposed to that all that much. And you'll see why I only have 5 receivers, because I think most teams like the Browns are going to bring 6 on, and there will be a secret number 6 later on in the show. Now, speaking of today's show, it is sponsored by Mint Mobile. So if you use your data everywhere you go and you don't want to be a victim of slow 5G, 4G, well, not a concern, because Mint Mobile is going to have you on the nation's largest 5G network. That is right. They're going to keep you guys covered. So head on over to mintmobile.com/chatsports to get a $15 monthly rate going. That way you can start putting some extra cheddar in your pocket, and you can spend it at First Energy Stadium on a nice hot dog or beer, whatever you fancy. All right, let's move on here. Tight end room. David Njoku, Harrison, Bryant are all locks. I think Miller Forristall, he makes this roster as well. And then this is one of those moments of he's looked so good in preseason. I didn't happen before, but now I've got him on my roster. Nakia Griffin-Stewart. He's a bubble guy. 4 tight ends is stretching it a little bit, but I think he might ultimately take the spot of a Johnny Stanton, who is sort of your fullback tight end flex, because I've loved what I've seen out of Griffin-Stewart. And outside of Njoku, you have expectations and optimism that Harrison Bryant and Miller Forristall will take a bigger leap forward. But you really want to cut definitely the most productive tight end you've seen so far? No, I don't think so. So I think even though it's just preseason and, yeah, he's going up against backups and whatnot, he has shown enough that this is worth a tight end sticking around, especially because he is that mold of what Andrew Berry's looking for, right? Awesome, huge size and target for Deshaun Watson to throw to in the red zone. So I've got him making the roster. Let's check out the offensive line now. So offensive line, we have Jedrick Wills, Joel Bitonio, Ethan Pocic, Wyatt Teller, and Jack Conklin. All of these guys are locks. James Hudson, I have him making the roster. Michael Dunn, especially for his versatility on the interior offensive line, put him on this roster as well with Blake Hance. Chris Hubbard is going to be that swing tackle with Hudson. Now, I only have the Browns taking 9 offensive linemen. Maybe they squeeze 10 on. If they do, I think it would be Brock Hoffman, a player who I was skeptical at first when Nick Harris went down, but the guy has looked rock solid so far. So he's the UDFA out of Virginia Tech. He's got experience at the center position. He can play guard. He'll be on the practice squad if they do roll with 9, and he'll probably be the first lineman getting called up if an injury were to happen. So those are my 9 offensive linemen making the roster. Before we check out the defensive side of things here, help me out by sharing today's video. It's super simple. The share icon is right there. Click share, put it on social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you are on, or you can just text it to a Browns friend or family member. Share today's video. I want to break the record for shares, which is 32 at the channel. Help me do that. Send it to everyone you know by hitting that share icon. Let's check out the defense here. Defensive end position here, kind of breaking it down individually. I've got the Browns taking 5 ends. You have your locks in Garrett, Clowney, and Alex Wright. Okay, all rookies essentially, even though I'm about to contradict myself, are essentially locks here. It gets tough after that, right? You've had Chase Winovich, who has been underwhelming since the trade, and you haven't seen much of him. That's partially why. Isaac Rochelle, who they signed in free agency, that's been a bit of like a second-half stud so far in training in preseason games. He has looked like a great pickup for a 4th defensive end to come in if there's an injury to happen, or if it's an obvious passing situation. They go, you know what? We want to get 3 edge rushers out there. Rochelle could kind of fit that mold. Now, I don't have Isaiah Thomas, and I don't like that I don't have Isaiah Thomas on here because he's looked great. But honestly, help me out here, okay? Poison Pill, all you guys, Deion Owens in the comment section, MVPs of the show. What do we think is going to happen outside of the top 3 guys of Garrett, Clowney, and Wright? They take 6, Winovich, Rochelle, and IT? Or do they roll with 5 and put Isaiah Thomas on the practice squad? Leave him up to maybe getting claimed by someone else? I don't know, Jim. You know, it's going to be a tough decision, but I think this, here's my kind of TED talk on Chase Winovich. Even though he has not been the most impressive defensive end of that threesome competing for those last 2 spots, Andrew Berry went out and traded for him, but with Mack Wilson, does he really want to punt on him after just 1 offseason, right? I think he wants to bring him on and see if he can recapture what Winovich did in his first 2 seasons in New England. Let's look at the interior defensive line now. Jordan Elliott, Taven Bryant are both locks. Tommy Togiai has looked maybe, let's go with exceeding our expectations, right? I definitely have been in the camp of I'm not all that in on Togiai. I'm not that confident on him. Maybe he watches the show and he's like, I want to prove that overweight YouTuber wrong. And then you got Perion Winfrey, another rookie who, yes, has been a bit underwhelming. He's a 4th-round pick. He hasn't even played 1 regular season game. Please do not overreact to that. I've got the Browns ultimately only taking 4 defensive linemen on the interior just because Glenn Logan or Perry, these guys are not good enough to take a roster spot from someone else, in my opinion. So this has been a hot topic so far on the streets of Cleveland. Should the Browns sign a defensive tackle? Simple Y for yes, N for no. You're going to see my little teaser in just a second, but I think yes, they should. Now, let's move to the linebacker room here. I've got the Browns taking 5 linebackers, and I don't like it because I want to see Tony Fields on this roster, but it's a numbers game. And JOK and Anthony Walker are locks. Sione Takitaki, I think, is pretty safe on this roster, but crazier things have happened. Jacob Phillips, I would say he's a bubble candidate at this point because he hasn't been a superstar in preseason. And when you're a third-round pick going up against other teams' backups, yeah, you'd like to see a little bit more, okay? Dakota Allen, who was signed over the summer, has been probably the best linebacker who's played a healthy amount of minutes so far in 2 preseason games. Tony Fields looked good, if I remember, against the Jags, not so much against the Eagles. Maybe they got him flip-flopped, but regardless, I think Dakota Allen is going to sneak onto this roster, and it might put Tony Fields on the practice squad. Maybe the Browns roll with 6 linebackers. The reason I've got them going with 5 is that we know Joe Woods, he likes to roll with predominantly 2 linebacker sets, JOK and Anthony Walker. So does he really need 6 linebackers? Maybe for special teams purposes, but ultimately, 6 for a 2-man job seems a bit excessive. Let's look at the cornerback room now, where I've got the Browns having 6 guys on this roster. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Greedy Williams, and Martin Emerson are all locks. A.J. Green is pretty safe on this roster, I would say. And then Herb Miller has just been in plays, right? He's been on camera. He's been on screen. He has been active in 2 preseason games. He has not been flawless, but he has definitely made plays. And I got to envision that when they go to their player meetings after games, Herb Miller is being talked about as someone that could be that last corner to sneak on this roster. A couple guys that come to mind, Sean Jolly, the UDFA out of App State. I wanted to have him on this roster because he has experience working at the nickel corner position. And right now we're all in on Newsome panning out there, but don't you want a little bit of insurance in case you need a breather or an injury were to happen? So Sean Jolly could be a guy to keep an eye on to sneak onto this roster. Kind of right place, right time for him. All right, safety room now. Grant Delpit, John Johnson, both locks. Richard LeCount, he's pretty safe on this roster. Ronnie Harrison would be that one guy where they could maybe surprise people and opt to go with like DeAnthony Bell, for example, another UDFA that's made a handful of great plays. Remember, he was the safety who had the forced fumble, the punch out in the Jags game in the second half. So that would be an interesting player to watch for against the Bears' final preseason game. If DeAnthony Bell looks amazing, maybe they go, you know what? Ronnie Harrison, he's not old or anything, but maybe we want to reset the calendar a little bit, go young, and hold on to DeAnthony Bell before maybe someone else steals him because they loved what they've seen out of him so far in preseason. All right, on to the special teams unit. We'll run through this. This is very simple. York Boherquez, right? We know this cast and crew now is pretty much put into stone. So here is my prediction, though. This is what I've been getting at this whole video here. I believe the Browns will add someone to their roster after the team's 53-man roster cuts. Because, actually, let's go back to that. I think there was a typo, Chase. Excuse me, yeah. Chase, can we go back to the special teams one right there? Because the numbers, the numbers, Mason, they weren't adding up, actually. Because if we look at the special teams unit here, you'll see I've got number 52. But 53 guys make the roster. So how could that be? Because you could put someone like Sean Jolly or DeAnthony Bell or Brock Hoffman on this roster, but ultimately, I believe the Browns, they are going to go out and they're going to sign someone that gets cut from another team. And who could that be? Someone I talked about back on July 14th during our live show. So if you are an OG of the channel here and you watch our live shows every Thursday at 4 Eastern, you might remember we talked about a player named Darius Slayton, the wide receiver for the New York Giants, who is on their roster bubble that's had some great plays and games for the G-Men. People are talking about him now as someone the Browns might go out and trade for. I don't think you have to trade for him. You could just wait for him to be cut. And Andrew Berry, Ivy League, he knows this. He's not going to go out and give away picks for someone who's about to be released potentially. So Darius Slayton or someone like Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, names that we've heard of because they've made some good plays here and there, could be someone that the Browns target after 53-man roster cuts are made on August 30th. Now, if you want an in-depth look at Darius Slayton, he had an awesome start. His rookie year, 5th-round pick out of Auburn. I remember I picked him up in fantasy in 2019, drafted him in 2020. He was a bit of a bum in 2020. The drops caught up with him. 12 drops over his last 2 seasons. But for a player who's had 13 touchdowns in 3 seasons, that's a 5th-round pick. I think that's worth a pickup, right? I think that's worth a gamble for that 6th wide receiver spot. Because if you remember, I only had 5 guys there. I could see them either going Slayton or going with a defensive tackle. Now, are you buying in on this current wide receiver room? Because with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, I am. I am in on him elevating David Bell and Anthony Schwartz and DPJ. But the fact of the reality is it's Jacoby Brissett for majority of the season. Maybe he could use some more proven talent and some less, we are optimistic and hopeful this guy's going to take the next step forward. Before we send you on your way here, appreciate everyone for clicking on to today's show, making us a part of your day. If you haven't already, follow me on Twitter, @Matthew Petey, always talking about the Brownies over there. That will do it for us. We'll see you guys later with more Browns news and rumors.